Let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important for enterprise companies worldwide: cyber risk management. Traditionally, cyber risk has been managed manually in silos, separate from the business's core operations. The future is about getting real-time risk insights benchmarked against your industry peers through automation. And CyberSaint's CyberStrong platform is leading the charge. CyberStrong is not just another point solution. It's a revolutionary platform. It's a quantified top-down risk approach where your unique cyber risks inform C-suite decision-making to identify your top 5 cyber risks and the controls to mitigate them. Sign up for your free cyber risk analysis by visiting securityweekly.com/cybersync. If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The Level Blue Futures Report 2024 sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business context that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today by visiting securityweekly.com/level blue. Cybersecurity, simplified. Do your end users always, and I mean always without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1Password. That's the number 1 password. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Ben Carr and Jason Albuquerque. All right, gentlemen, time to get into the articles for this week. So I start with this great first article. How to find the right CISO. Because you guys probably found this one to be a little interesting, but I'm trying to figure out, like, is this exactly how to find the right CISO?
Well, it's funny. As I'm reading through it, one of the items in there was involve your board in the interview process. Well, I think that's noble and that's great. What are the possibilities of that happening, right? I mean, at the end of it, we're trying to get an interview with, I don't know, some level of executive leader, right? Whether it be the CEO or something of that nature, and we're struggling with that. So to be able to bring the board in, I think, is nirvana. But how about we start with getting an interview with the CEO? Let's start there.
Right. Which wasn't even on here, by the way. I mean, the first item on here was level and structure the role appropriate, which we've talked about a lot, right? But they're like, well, maybe they should report to the CIO. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what is that? Yeah. Figure out that reporting to the CIO isn't going to attract the right CISO first. That's a non-starter for a lot of people now.
Right. So I mean, this article for me was a little all over the place, right? I mean, at the end of it, do you think you're ever going to get an interview with a board member if you're going to be reporting up to the CIO? You're not even getting an interview with the CEO. So that right there is contradictory, right? At the end of it, you're going to educate the board on who you're going to hire for a CISO if the CIO is going to be that kind of filter in between. I don't know if that's reality either, unless we change the way we're doing things, right? And I think the intent of the think about both defensive and offensive tactics, the intent was right. I don't think the language is right? I mean, when you look at the description, they're talking about having the CISO facilitate and help be part of business growth and be a strategic advantage, but they don't talk about security. They talk about the technology. Mm-hmm. They don't talk about risk. They talk about technology.
Right.
So it's not about allow the cybersecurity team to be a business enabler. It's about the technology being a business enabler. So every piece of this, I had a little bit of a set of notes on.
I figured you would, which is why I threw it in here, because these
Yeah.
are articles people that boards and maybe CEOs and others are looking at, like, well, this is a criteria for hiring my CISO. And you're sitting there going,
Right.
well, wait a minute, where's risks? Where's risk
Exactly.
in the discussion? It's not
Didn't
here.
exist at all.
And they had change management, which I thought was super strange in there. Change
Yes.
Yeah,
management?
very
Like,
tactical.
So again, it was one of those, Ben, it was the intent, right? I think the language is so off, but the intent, I think what they meant to put in this article was make sure you have a culture that embraces change. I think that was the intent behind what they were getting at.
Yeah,
but
look,
change
and I would,
management is a
I would tilt that slightly and say, like, make sure you have a culture that embraces security as a differentiator, right? Like that's
yeah,
like,
sure,
that's
absolutely.
really more like yeah, okay, we embrace change, but we don't care about security. That's still not going to help
Yeah,
you, right? Like
yeah.
I think you have to have a security from the top culture, and that
Right.
it kind of rolls out onto everything else. So yeah, the article. This was a really strange article about like not how to find a top level CISO, almost how to alienate them if they read this list.
Well, right, because if you're, so this is like, how do CEOs, their executive teams, and their HR partners attract the best of the market? If this is the approach, CISOs be warned.
Wait, Matt. This probably has been the approach. That's
well,
why we're
it
failing.
could be right. It could be very true, right? But as a CISO, you have to be on the flip side and go, wait a minute. If this is the stuff they're talking about, is this even the right company for me?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Red flag.
100%.
Because it goes both ways, right? You got to find the right CISO, and the CISO got to find the right company
Exactly
to be part of, to be successful. And if this is their evaluation criteria, it would create more questions than it would answer, I think, at the company level. Agreed. All right. Next article. New security leadership style needed for stressed workers. So this is an interview with Tara Wisniewski from ISC Squared. Now we know the data, right? We know this around the workforce challenges, et cetera, right? And so this interview goes in talking about some of the new leadership styles. And again, we talk about some of this stuff, emotional intelligence. We talk about in our leadership communication segment almost every week as being factors in this. And then they get into some of the other components. And I'm like, we've been talking about this for a long time. Like, to us, this isn't really new, but again, what are we missing?
Yeah, no, I feel you. I mean, we've been talking about the pressures that are on our teams and on leadership, right? We know that we're dealing with some of the worst threat landscapes out there and the most risk out there that we've ever seen in our careers. And we've talked about the need for leaders who can really get ahead of that emotional intelligence side of the aisle and really hone in on those skills to make sure that our team's aren't burning out, right? One of the things I picked up on in the article too was I'm so glad they used skills shortage instead of talent gap in here, right? Because we've talked about this. It really isn't a talent gap out there. There's tons of workforce out there, especially now this year, right? We've seen so many people come into the workforce. So the question on the table that we've had in other episodes, and I think on Say Easy Do Hard, is it more of a skill shortage versus a talent gap, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and this is another article where I thought, like, the title of the article, new security leadership style needed for stressed workers. I was really looking to hit more of, like, I don't know, the things I think are actually stressing people out, right? I don't think if you talk to anybody in the industry, right, whether it be an IC, like, they're really new to their job, or you talk to, up to a CISO level, I don't think anybody's saying, like, this is the worst threat landscape. I can't stand the threats out there. It's stressing me out how much we're being attacked. Like, that isn't it, man. Like, that's what we do. That's what we love to do. That's what we know, right? Like, right? A lot of us, like, operate better in a stressful environment of, like, the actual threats and the stuff going on. Like, that's our foundational, I don't know, our core. What we don't like is all the aggravation that associates around it that doesn't have anything to do with, like, the cyber landscape, right? And that's what's, I think, is stressing more people out. I don't know, Jay, do you feel the same way on that, or do you think I'm off?
No, 100% agreed. I mean, that's why I'm saying the things we know are bad threat landscape, right? It's always the worst. Every year it gets worse. We know this, right? We know that technology is rapidly
Spoiler.
evolving. That's been happening
Threat
for how
actors will
long
be
now?
more advanced in 25.
Right. Right. So, I mean, threats are getting worse. Regulatory pressures are increasing. Legal pressures are increasing. Technology is rapidly evolving. These are we know this. This happens every year. This happens all the time.
Yeah, I would say that the stress of like people not realizing that security is an important part of what you need to do to protect a company against the risk that's out there, right?
Yeah,
The threat
along with the accountability of being the scapegoat if something goes sideways,
that's right.
but the
And
business
not
made
being
bad
given the
decisions,
budget
right?
and the authority to actually make change.
Exactly it. That's where the pressures lie. The pressures lie with, yeah, we don't have the budget. No, we're not going to empower you with, the ability to influence the company. No, we're not going to have you have a seat at the table to let the board know the risk that's involved in the business today, so we can make some really good business decisions. But if a breach happens, if a hack happens, guess what? Your neck is on the line.
Yeah, which are all the things that tie back to that first
CISO.
article, right? Like if you're looking for the right CISO and you want the right guy, like figure out how to address those things. Like give him empowerment, give him authority, have the right culture, allow him. Like, look, you don't have to give infinite budget, but say this is your budget. I'm going to let you figure it out. Like, don't micromanage the budget for me, right? Like, don't come back every quarter and be like, I need to make a 10% cut for no reason.
Exactly. And you want to know what? Let's add on that the fact that you could be criminally liable now.
Yeah.
And it could affect you personally.
That's just a small adder.
That's just a little one.
Now you know why I put this article behind the last one. All right. Talking about managing people, how to manage a distracted team. So I put this one in order for the previous article. So these, I kind of try to build on these things when I research these and put these together. Again, another great Harvard Business Review article on how to manage a distracted team. Because look, if you're under a lot of stress, you're under a lot of pressure, you're also distracted. And we were talking about this pre-show a little bit, like tomorrow's stress will be interesting, right? A lot of distracted people tomorrow because the election, right? And so how do you manage in that environment? So I found this, the premise of the article is a little interesting. It's from the 2020 election, the kind of the precursor, but then what do you don't do and what do you do in order to kind of make this better? And I thought it was interesting. This first tip that she brought in is avoid anxious fixing. Like not necessarily anything to fix per se.
No, but as I read through it a little bit, it kind of honed into a point, and I've seen this happen many, many times, right? When a leader, a CEO, an executive leader starts to get anxious, they start to micromanage and want to bring back control. Mm-hmm. When the pressure is on, the leader feels out of control and starts to kind of flip into that micromanager, and that's the worst enemy right there. Right? That's where it starts to bring down your team. That's where you're starting to project your anxiety onto your team. And I've seen that happen so many times, and it becomes that toxic environment now because the leader is stressed and they're just projecting their anxiety on the rest of the team by micromanaging and really having their thumb on top of everything and, not allowing their team to even breathe. And that breeds the anxiety. That'll breed even more distraction.
Well, then it leads into number 2, which is then you're less likely to give updates. And it says give non-update updates to prevent the rumor mill from happening, right? If you want control, you probably also don't want a lot of communications happening, which is another, it's that spiraling kind of effect.
Exactly.
That's a hard one though, right? So I've seen cases where like, hey, I just, I've got nothing here. Like you guys have the most up-to-date information. That can be hard though, because then that's like, that can breed like wait, if we're not getting any information and there's no information being given to upper management, like what's so you really have to set this direction where like, not that you don't know what's going on, but like we're going to stay the course for where we've been because this is the direction that we have, right? I mean, it's a very tight rope, I think, to walk in that line.
Oh, 100%. I mean, silence isn't the way, right? I mean, because what ends up happening is the narrative gets defined for you, right? And you don't ever want that to happen because people, especially when people are anxious, right? They're gonna start, making their own scuttlebutt, and you don't want that happening through an organization. So, define the narrative. But at the end of the day, you don't have to be shoving communications down people's throats either, right? There's over communicating. There's a balance. This is all a science. This is all a nuance, right? And it's never going to be perfect, but it's about finding that right balance in the communication.
Now, I think this does highlight, though, look, when you move to the CISO level and you're operating at that level, it's a lot more about people and process than it is about
Yep.
technology, right? Like, and
It
tech
is.
is important. Like, everybody loves tech. Tech's important. But like, if you're missing out on the people element of how you're managing your team, and you're missing out on educating yourself on how to become a better manager, right? Executive, I think you're missing out on a lot, right? You've got to figure out how to have that communication and make it effective communication.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The communication skills side of this is the important part. Yeah. Delicate balance, but needs to happen. All right. Combating human error to protect the business. Now, the first part of this article was the interesting part. Then it gets into managed service providers. And I mean,
it was a commercial for managed service providers. Is basically what it ended up being.
Exactly what it was. But as you think about it, though, these are the areas to focus, Jason, right? The kind of the key areas around misconfiguration, misdelivery, and the end user, I thought were the really interesting parts out of this article to be like, well, how many people are really misconfiguration? We talk vulnerability management a lot, but a misconfiguration is a vulnerability, but misconfiguration is harder to do, in my opinion, right? Like understanding, setting configuration baselines, validating, that's really, really tough, right? But it's these misconfigurations that are leading to some of these breaches. And I think we don't focus on the configuration management side of the equation as much as we probably should, because it is a leading cause for breaches. Then you get into the misdelivery of sending something to the wrong person, which is interesting, right? But then we all know it's the end user at the end of the day. And security awareness and training has not worked. Phishing simulations have not worked. Like, I was looking for approaches to these three areas, but that's not what I got. I got a sales pitch for management.
No, I was looking either at the beginning or the end of this, just good luck with an exclamation point. Like,
yeah, I mean, it did. It flipped into outsource the risk to a managed service provider, and that obviously isn't the answer. I mean, we want to talk about vendor risk management as part of this. I mean, come on, traditional MSPs add more risk to your organization than probably any other third party. They have keys to the castle for your environment, right? They have all your credentials. They have access. They have probably bloated access. They have agents all over your organization,
and you have less oversight. You're not able to assess them as often as you're able to assess your own internal controls. Look, I'm not saying that people do a great job at assessing their own internal controls, but like once you extend that to third parties, it just widens that attack surface so much.
And I mean, listen, I come from the MSP world, and I'm sitting here saying MSPs of the past, they need to disappear, right? That's why conversations in the industry we're having around being a services partner, right? Where we're sitting there and we're being strategic and we're being embedded into your risk management program, and we're having those really high level conversations. So we're not that traditional MSP that just throws agents all over your environment, and we have unfettered access across the entirety of the environment. Those days need to disappear. They really do. They present way too much risk. So outsourcing, that's not the way. Partnership is the way.
And I question that. So there's a stat in here: end users are now responsible for 87% of errors, as opposed to accounting for just 20% last year. I don't know that I question 87%, but I certainly question it was only 20% last year. Like, I don't get that. Seems there's a disconnect somewhere in there for me. In that
data. I think it's the way they broke down the data this year. We had Jeff Pollard on from Forrester a couple of weeks ago, and we dug into a couple of these, right? We talked about moving away from the old managed service providers and really moving to managed detection and response companies, because what you just said, Jason, right? The old legacy MSPs are not solving this problem, right? No. You need partners that can help you with this.
That's
and
right.
You've seen this transition from the old legacy managed security providers, which were basically doing firewall rules for you, to companies that actually do detection and response and be an extension of your staff. So he definitely highlighted that in that conversation, that report. We also talked about the need to manage human risk. And again, he's right, but it's still challenging, right? Human risk management and understanding what the human does and how to prevent them, like the old traditional ways are not working. And so outsourcing even that piece doesn't make any sense either.
No. Because part of the solution is a cultural shift. And if your culture is outside the walls in some third party, they're not going to embrace the culture. They're not going to be part of that cultural change, right? Because that's what's needed. Security needs to be embedded in everyone's day to day. If you're an intern, if you're on the finance team, if you're on the HR team, and hey, your developers and your IT folks and all of them as well, they're not immune to this. They have to have that as part of their daily as well. It's a cultural shift. And if you're outsourcing that and putting that outside the quote unquote four walls, you're not going to be able to build that culture.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things people don't think about when they outsource or they use third parties is that, in a really good third party relationship, it should be an extension of your organization, but it's always going to be an extension. So there's always going to be this differentiation, right? As you get outside from security into finance or legal or, IT, there's a level of separation there. Now you've gone another layer out and it gets harder and harder, right? And a lot of people try to take this approach of like, I'm just buying a service, like I just need delivery. And I think a lot of times you're not. You're trying to buy an extension of your organization.
That's right.
But you're not treating it that way. And so that leaves a super wide chasm that it becomes disabling in some sides.
Yeah. I mean, I am a strong, and again, I grew up in this world, right? I am a strong advocate of the legacy MSPs dying on the vine. What you need is a partner who's going to be embedded, an arm of your organization in those strategic meetings, being able to strategize with you, for you, be an evangelist for you. It's a partnership. It's not an MSP. It's not a provider. It's not a third party. It's someone embedded in your team. It's a business partner that you can trust and have a long-standing relationship with. And strategize together.
Yeah. Strategize together. Figure out how to leverage their skill sets and their differentiated capabilities with the rest of your team. What's strategic to you? What's best for them to do? Like those are the conversations that should be happening with partners. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Got a couple more articles left. This next article, a crucial leadership skill for navigating ambiguity is agility. And he lists out the 9 traits of an effective leader. And I always turn to Jason and say, is this ordered correctly?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I think the order is okay. It's not bad. I mean, it'd be minor adjustments, minor changes from my perspective. So nothing that I would blow up. But I think
you don't think subject matter expertise is first? Come on, really?
No. Well, no, not at all. I mean, that's probably bottom, right? So
I thought that was well placed, right? Like get that you're a leader. Yeah.
Exactly it. And because you can bring in subject matter expertise on your team, right? Part of a good leader is bringing in the places where you don't have the strengths, right? I mean, that's the key 100%. To that. I think the focus on this article though is the right focus, because without agility, we can't bring resilience to our team. Without agility, when the stuff hits the fan, we can't project confidence to our team. So those are the things that a leader needs to be doing on the daily. Their teams need to be confident in their leadership. They're confident in their department, confident on the mission. And they need to know that the leader is resilient and can take any type of change, any type of shift, any type of economic downturn like we just went through, and be able to get them through it. So that agility, that resilience, that adaptability to change, guess what? We talked about the new normal during COVID. This is the new normal for business now. We're going to continuously be disrupted. We're going to continuously see these changes in economy, these shifts in economy, these technologies coming, at us rapidly every single day. It's going to be constant disruption. Get used to it. Be agile, because if not, you're going to fail.
Yes. And to make your team move with all these changes, this is how you build trust with that team.
That's right.
So when you change course, they're with you, right? And what I took away from this is these are really steps to build trust with your team. You treat them like a human. You understand what makes them tick. You understand where they want to go in their careers. You
Yep.
provide them feedback. Like, you're building a relationship. This is relationship at the end of the day. And if you want to get that team to be agile and change under stress, there has to be a trust relationship there. And if it's not there, they're going to resist. 100%. And if they resist, then we go back to like article number 2 or whatever it was that talks about micromanaging, right? Like, right.
Anxiety through the roof, right?
Right.
No doubt about it. You've heard me preach this many, many times on the show. Trust is the foundation of every relationship, every single one.
Yep.
You can't build a relationship if one party doesn't trust the other. Toxic. Won't happen.
Toxic.
Ever.
Yep. Last article, how to master conflict resolution. So it kind of ties into the last article a little bit, right? So I brought this one in at the end, because this is when you have a team that has different points of view, like this can happen. And so how do you manage and master conflict resolution across that team is an important skill.
Yeah. And see, this one actually had one where I felt very strongly about reordering the 4 steps, right? And it was the 2 middle ones that I think it was important to reorder. So try to see the situation from another person's point of view. I think that's core. Like, that's the first thing you need to do. But I also think the next thing is, what's the primary goal of this conversation? What's the outcome you're looking to achieve? Then you can pinpoint what the conflict's all about. But you should put yourself in someone else's shoes, and what's the outcome you are supposed to achieve? Those are the 2 most important pieces, I think. So I think those 2 should have been flipped.
Yeah. And then obviously once you can do that, then you can figure out an amicable way to move forward, right? Yeah.
Exactly it.
Awesome. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.